This is WMVP Radio, and this goes out to all the veterans and active duty military out there. We're raising awareness about mental and physical health out in the community. Everybody lend a hand. That's right, it goes out to all the families, all the veteran supporters, you and you and you and you. Let's go! And especially you, Birdman. We love you, brother. This is WMVP Radio.
Everybody, Ray Shino here, call sign Shino. What's going on? We just finished the Salty Sailor Talk this evening, and the topic of discussion this evening was what gives you a sense of accomplishment. You know, in thinking about this, we think about all of the accomplishments we've had in our lives, whether it be family, purpose, things that are going right, money, glory, work, recognition, even connection. But what does this all mean? It gives us value. We talked about how a lot of us are helping veterans in the community, right? Whether it's streaming, helping others, bringing people together, which is super awesome and definitely something to be proud of because it definitely is an accomplishment. When we think of accomplishment, it could be everything that you do. If you appreciate life and everything that's around us, that's an accomplishment in itself. And if you really think about it, a lot of us have put on that uniform, raised our right hand, and protected and defended the Constitution. And sometimes us being as hard as we are, especially while we are on active duty, sometimes we go through some stuff and sometimes we need to ask for help. And that's an accomplishment in itself, considering a lot of us live with that pride to not ask for help. But when we're struggling, we need that help. So it's an accomplishment to ask for help. And it's definitely an accomplishment when you get that help because you're only upgrading. If you need help or you know someone who needs help, get them the help that they need. That's an accomplishment in itself. When we talked about this question, another question was asked. How do I get a sense of accomplishment? It may be hard for some people to acknowledge that we have done so much in such a short time span. A lot of us who got out of the military were in our mid to late 20s. Some of us got out in our 30s. And your military experience, whether you were the butcher, the baker, or the candlestick maker, is an accomplishment. And I thank each and every one of you for your service and what you did in the military. Some of us have struggled with our own demons, especially coming from war. And it's all about that fight. Say it all the time before the end of the session, stay in that fight. Because that's how we live. We're all about that next fight. And we have to think about it and reframe it to not what's the next fight, but what's the next step in our lives. And when we think about it like that, now we're mission driven and now we have purpose. And for some of us who have a hard time finding that purpose again, like I challenge you to think about life and what you can do from where you are. A lot of people ask me, hey Shino, what can I do? How can I help the community? Like, I don't know how to help. Some people give money, some people give their time, some people give a listening ear, which sometimes that's all that's needed, especially with the situations that we have in the veteran community where we have veterans that are struggling. Sometimes all they need is a friend, a battle buddy, a wingman, a fellow brother or sister to help us get through our struggles. Also in our talk, we talked about struggle. That struggle before we even get to that accomplishment. And sometimes in the lives that we live, we think of short-term effects. Some of those short-term effects can be illustrated with a string, as illustrated in our talk. Sometimes we have a bundle of yarn sometimes that we have in our pocket, and that could be our life and everything. And when we think about our life, we measure it in strings, like maybe 1 foot, 2 foot long, and we're just pulling it out and analyzing it, seeing what we can do to change and live a better life, right? Some people talk about the snowball. We have this little issue, and you could say that it's a little snowball that we've created. And you roll it down a hill, and that snowball becomes a huge ball. And eventually when it gets down the mountain, it is so big, sometimes it's just overwhelming. In my profession, as a social worker, we talk about the iceberg. If you look at the iceberg, just like the Titanic, it looks like just this little piece of ice that's floating on the top. You have the ice cap. But what you don't realize is there's so much more that is underneath it, and it could be super large. Like as large as something to sink the Titanic, one of the biggest ships in the world. I think it is the biggest ship in the world, and it sunk it because we didn't understand the struggles we go through. So in understanding struggle, we have to lay it all on the table and be honest with ourselves. And you could think of that as, a goal that we can meet in our lives. right? So we deal with struggle, we deal with, all of our problems and stuff. And sometimes we measure it by the little legs that we analyze it in, or those small factors. But sometimes we have to be honest with ourselves and just lay it all on the table and look at it for what it is and see what we can do to change it, right? So with people that are struggling out there, and after the Salty Sailor Talks, we definitely talk to a lot of people, either one-on-one or in little small groups, and we talk about struggle, especially guys that have been to war, that are dealing with the family issues or personal issues, personal demons. And, in order for us to work on them to get better, we have to lay it all on the table. We have to be honest with ourselves, especially being honest with other people that are trying to help us, so we could figure out how to solve these problems. Thinking about it from the military concept, like if we have issues, we need to address it on the spot. It is not just self-care. It's what we call in the infantry world, priorities of fire. You don't want to just take out the little guys that are just popping off. You want to take out those big machine guns, those big guns and stuff like that. And if we don't analyze the battlefield, which could be our problems, and look at the biggest threats that we have, we're not really going to go anywhere. And sometimes those paths and struggles are hard. So we have to climb up those hills and put in the effort, put in the work into getting better. And then when we get into a state of mind where we're better, or we're in a better place, that's an accomplishment, man. Some of us, struggle, and we don't know what we've accomplished in life because the stress and the struggle is just overwhelming and such a burden that it's holding us down. But we need to let go of those struggles and those burdens that we have. Focus on healing, recovery, and taking care of ourselves. And we can get into such a better place. I talked about, my accomplishments. My accomplishment is being able to connect with, everybody on the Salty Sailor Talk, or anybody who's just listening right now. If you're listening and you've been watching the other videos and you've been a part of the Salty Sailor Talk or any of the other talks that I'm a part of, I hope it's reached out to you. I hope it's helped you in some sort of positive way. And I challenge you into continuing to come and sharing, what we're doing with the community, especially our brothers and sisters that are struggling out there. And thank you for everybody that continues to come